Welcome to the McKnight Center, and thank you for joining us on Center Stage. During this series, we invite you to learn alongside us as we take a closer look at the performing arts, guest artists, and so much more. We encourage you to keep on learning and create your own fun at home. Joining us today, we have Joe Buono and Tristan Clarke, the dynamic duo better known as Melodica Men. Recently, Melodica Men joined us here at the McKnight Center to share their charismatic energy with the public, OSU students, and Stillwater Public Schools middle and junior high schools. Soon, we'll sit down with Joe and Tristan to take a closer look at their creation and continued development of Melodica Men. But first, let's join them as they take center stage and share with us one of their self-arranged medleys.
Y'all ready for this? Hey! Hey! Yes! Here we go.
I am here with the charismatic duo of Joe and Tristan, that better known as Melodica Men. We here at the McKnight Center have been lucky to share in their talent and expertise with a socially distanced performance for the public, a master class for students, and also our very first virtual concert for Stillwater Middle and Junior High School. So we are very appreciative to Tristan and Joe. Thank you for being here. And give us a brief history of how you came to be both friends and then future Melodica Men.
Sure. We both grew up in Northern Virginia, and we met at music school at the Peabody Conservatory. Tristan was studying trumpet, bass trombone, became friends through school. Tristan went to Juilliard after that. And then a few years later, I found a melodica under my grandpa's couch. I didn't know what it was at the time, but it was a melodica under my grandpa's couch, and I took it. I thought it was really funny. I made a video playing a Stevie Wonder solo, sent it to my family. They thought it was hilarious. My mom got me this kind for graduating. I thought it was hilarious. I played it all summer on my own, but then I kind of fell by the wayside. I forgot about it until Tristan came along.
Yeah, and I was just immediately compelled by it, and then we started traveling together just for fun. Like, I was going to visit family, and we had our own melodicas. We played on the street, and we went to Seattle and Paris, came home, started doing videos, and very slow start, but eventually went viral with Rite of Spring. And we learned a lot from that, because we learned, like, oh wow, classical music people love this kind of thing, just like music nerds just like us. They really go crazy when they see, Rite of Spring on melodicas. So we hit our market, kind of, and then we just really, we're very specific about targeting that for the rest of our stuff.
So I know that in your experience, Joe mentioned just reading signs and taking advantage of those signs. So you saw this opportunity, you snatched the opportunity, but what was it like to turn the page going from hobby, or what you've also mentioned as maybe a joke amongst friends, into a business that in turn made profit for you? What was that process like?
Yeah. It was a bit ambiguous at first, because we didn't know what it was, and we didn't know how seriously to take it or what kind of potential it had. It was kind of just this freak thing in the water, like 1.5 million views in a day. What does that mean? I have no idea.
Yeah.
And then once we play with the symphony, because the Jacksonville Symphony invited us to play, and then we had another Nutcracker video go viral, we thought maybe there's something to it. But it was for a good nearly a year. We were putting a lot of effort into it, but there was no profit. We had no way to make money from it. And it got to the point, especially for me, where I said, look, like this is really fun, but I got to get my career sorted out, and I don't know where to slot this thing. Is it hobby? Is it career? And what helped me in putting it in the career slot for about 3 years was thinking, if I don't find out what happens from pursuing this thing, then I feel like I'm going to regret that. Even if it's unlikely to ever be a sustainable enterprise in that capacity, but I want to know what happens in the story, and if I don't find that out, I feel like that would be a shame.
Yeah.
You'd always regret it as an older person.
Yep.
As far as, your brand, you created your brand, you've been responsive, how do you project and see yourselves remaining relevant? Like if you were to plan out and be creative or proactive and remaining relevant, what practices do you have now that you feel like are best fit for your brand?
Great. Right.
Right. Well, one thing we're doing now that we haven't done before is we're starting to repost older content from 3 years ago, and still gets a great reaction. People still really like it. So that's
seen it. It's new for a lot of people.
Right, because when it first came out, we had maybe 50,000 followers on Facebook, and now I have way more than that. So there's a lot of people who haven't seen that, and we get to recycle it in a way that's not cheap, at least for now.
Yeah.
So that's great. But yeah, long term, we see this as a jumping off point to do more live performances, especially for education, like family shows in front of symphony. Like we would just destroy that market. Like we're perfect for that.
Yeah.
And even doing the thing that even though we couldn't see the kids, like I love that, you know, and that's this is such we actually didn't talk about this, but the melodica itself is an educational instrument in countries like Korea and Japan. Everyone learns on melodica instead of recorder.
Oh.
Yeah, which is so much better. Because recorder, you have to do a very specific air exchange, and then you cover your fingers, and it's not
very
transferable.
forgiving.
Yeah, it's not forgiving at all. But this is you get the keyboard interface. It's so much more intuitive for music theory, because otherwise it's just, what holes do I cover? Tell me. And
Sure.
this is no, this is interval. There's actually space between these two notes. And I'll say that I'm really excited about doing more live education shows.
Awesome.
Yeah.
I will say that in working with Melodica Men, prior to coming to McKnight Center and in the whole planning process, one thing that I have found very marketable and just worthwhile as far as a businessman is you never hesitated to say yes.
Yeah, I really like the idea of being a kind of yes man. Have you seen that Jim Carrey movie, by the way?
If I've seen it, it's been a long time, but I know exactly what you're
Yeah,
talking
he
about.
just starts saying yes to everything as life transforms. But there's something to that, because if you have a motto this is who I am, these are the things I do, it's well, that's inherently not expansive, and you're probably, maybe it'll work, but probably not over the long term.
Yeah.
And there's something about, we've been asked to do things we've played at a barbecue in Nebraska. We've been invited to play at a nudist convention. We've been we haven't done that yet.
Okay.
But it's not we're one. The fact that our act can be invited to play at that and also the BBC Symphony. It's the fact that it is ill-defined in a sense, and part of that is just the nature of the instrument. No one knows what box to put this in. It's like if you show them a violin, you have a whole word cloud of associations with that. But this is and you kind of we've made of it what we feel like.
Yeah. And I think that's great because you're not limiting yourself and you are presenting orchestral music, you're presenting cinematic music, you're presenting pop music. So that definitely makes it marketable in and of itself.
In regards to being a yes man, also, we've been given opportunities in the past that have been way beyond us, and we've been like, what? The first one we did was February. We did our first full orchestra show, 2 hours long, and when we first agreed to it, we didn't really know that because we've only done 15-minute segments of orchestra shows, and then we have to do a whole thing, and we said yes, but we had no idea what we were going to do.
Yeah.
And if we had been too afraid and limited ourselves by saying that's not really our thing, then we wouldn't. There's this huge thing that is so wonderful now that we do that we would have missed out on.
Yeah.
So you really just have to be open-minded and not, like you say, not define yourself too strictly. Of course, know your strengths, but
Yeah, I mean, I actually didn't want to do the orchestra show. When I found out about it, I'm like, wait, it's a full 2-hour thing? We have to make arrangements? We might only do it with this one local orchestra once? I'm like, we're gonna give like 3 months of our lives for one gig? I'm like, how? And then a few months after that, we got asked to do, it by another orchestra, and then it clicked like, maybe this is another possibility we hadn't seen before. Yeah.
In the growth mindset and you wanting to say yes and remain, malleable to all the situations that given you, you've spoken bluntly, if you will, about being more of an introvert when it comes to how you grew up and maybe even how your personality off stage. So I think it's important for anybody who's interested in the performing arts or being an entertainer that you don't have to be an extroverted personality to have those gifts. So how did you maybe combat some of the challenges that come along with being an introvert to make yourself comfortable in an engaging audience situation?
Right. A lot of it for me, I'll go, I guess, in reverse, is energy management. Like before we go on stage, Tristan jokes, I'm just dead. I'm just like in the cab, then on stage, I'm like, because it's so much energy for me. Like it's really exhausting as an introvert. Like I just want to, play piano by myself in a room for 8 hours. Like I'm totally cool with that.
Yeah.
So, but to do something like that, I really have to, breathe
Recharge.
and recharge for real. It's an energetic thing. But going from being someone who's very shy to, not nearly as shy now was, I was proactive about pushing myself outside of my comfort zone. I got just tired of being shy, so I'd start saying hi to random people. I researched posture and started walking around differently. It felt so awkward at first. I'm like, this isn't me. You feel like you're in someone else's shoes. You feel like an imposter. You really do. But the more you do that, it becomes habit, and then other people start reinforcing that side of you, and then you realize that you can change things about yourself that you thought were immutable, because you think, oh, I am just a shy or introverted person. It's like, well, yeah, I mean, we're given, there's a spectrum of extroversion, introversion, and maybe you fall at the 8th percentile for introversion, but you can actually inch that closer over time, which is really interesting. So just to think of yourself as an experiment, and then you can change things about yourself is really fun for me.
Mm-hmm. One thing that I think is really interesting about Joe is that when I met him, he was this other person. He was like this explosive, way too far extroverted kind of guy who was trying to, but I didn't even know that he was he would just sit in his room and eat lunch alone, and you just got tired of it, and you were just like, I don't want to do this anymore. And so I think that really takes a lot of courage to do that and to realize I don't want this. And then he went too far for a little bit, and so I had to figure out where he really wanted to be. And so now he has a balance where he can do the explosive, and he really enjoys it. And then he can also just, be alone and just a lizard or whatever, and sit on a rock in the sun.
Yeah.
Since you have been able to respond to the signs, and marketing almost came to you and people requesting live performances, on the flip side, there's going to be several entrepreneurs that maybe don't have that fall into their lap. So from your experience, can you think of resources that would be beneficial, even beyond social media, for other entrepreneurs in order to market themselves?
Generally, outside of music world, one of the main things entrepreneurs talk about is solving other people's problems. That it actually takes a lot of empathy. It's hard to imagine, what someone's life is like and what their most pressing concerns, though, and how you might help them or what things they're dealing with. And for me, the first entrepreneurial thing I tried to do was start my own, private piano studio. And I made the big mistake starting out where I was so obsessed with the theory and ideas about how I wanted to teach, when in reality, the best thing you can do is, in tech world, they call it a minimal viable product. It's make the most basic version and then get feedback. Because you want to get the feedback recursive loop going as quickly as possible, because that's how we worked. I mean, the whole thing was based on feedback with the audience, but whatever your market is, or whatever someone's problem you're trying to solve, maybe they need to hire some kind of group for this concert series, then the quicker you can get feedback, that's what builds the thing itself. Because I've had all these lofty ideas of music and language, and then over about 5 years of teaching, I realized it's just about reinforcing the consistency of practice. How can I monitor that? And now I have ideas about how to do that, but I wouldn't have learned that if I wasn't, about getting very frequent feedback.
I think to tag along with what he's saying, what I really liked about what he said is when he said help solve people's problems, like the helping part. And so if you're trying to get hired in music or anything, and I'm thinking about this as a composer, there's a big assistantship or apprenticeship culture. So say if I want some big guy to hire me or to work for him, I would genuinely want to present to him like, I want to help you, and here's how I can do it. And like even with us, like we want to contribute something positive to the world. And so like we're not like we are help. It's not helping, but you know what I'm saying. We're making people laugh or smile, or just putting on a nice show that people enjoy. So I like that idea.
Any last tips of advice for entrepreneurs in music, outside of music, no matter the product? What would be that one last bit of advice you would give?
I would say notice what excites you. And there's different tiers of excitement. There's low-level, superficial stuff, but there's also a few things that kind of speak out of the void to you for whatever reason. Because most things you don't even notice in your perception. Like, I don't care about these chairs. Like, I don't notice it. It's not even like part of it. But some things, like you'll hear a chord and you're like, oh my God, and like changes you. Like, notice that. Those things are super rare. Like, you can't just wake up and say, tomorrow I'm gonna be really passionate about baseball. It's like, you don't control the things that excite you. You can notice that and act on them. And I think it's your responsibility to do that, to notice and act on what excites you.
Yeah. My one nugget would just be that no idea is too stupid. Particularly, this was very relevant to us, and there have been so many things where I've been like, oh God, I got such a stupid idea, and like I would want to tell Joe, but I'd be like, it's just so dumb, I'm not even gonna bother. I don't want to waste his time, I don't want to look stupid. But I did tell him. We bounced this idea around, and it grew into something else, and that's happened so many times with us. But also, composing music. If I've got a musical idea that I think is stupid or bad or whatever, if I kind of follow the idea, sometimes it can lead you to a really great place. So just being open and like not super judgmental and critical, and be nice to yourself. That's really important to me, and I always have to remind myself.
For sure.
Though I know how to find you and follow you, remind our at-home viewers how we can find you on social media or even online.
MelodicaMen.com is our website. You can just type that into Facebook or YouTube.
Well, thank you, Tristan and Joe, for taking time to spend with us here at the McKnight Center. I know that I've learned a lot from your entrepreneurship, as well as just enjoyed your entertainment. So thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks for having us.
And a special thanks to each of you, our viewers, patrons, and advocates. Keep an eye out for our next installment, and until then, keep creating at home.